And welcome to another amazing episode of the Game Informer Show. That's right, that's the show where we inform you about games. It's all in the title there. I'm your host, Ben Reeves, joined today by a great collection of dudes. Matt Miller.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Alex Stadnick.
What's up, dudes? How's it going?
How's it going, man?
Good.
Rock on, man. And Dan, the Snack Tack. How's it going?
Snack Attack.
The Snack Attack's in the house. What's up? Hi, Ben.
That's
It's great
right.
to be here, as always. It's great to see everybody here. Got a lot of great faces here. Love it.
Yeah, all the perfect faces. That's why I brought you guys on board. We have an awesome show today. We have later on in the episode, let me ask you guys this. What do you guys think was the biggest PC game in the 90s, like the mid 90s?
Wait, well, this is getting tricky now.
It's tricky.
I think I've been set up for failure here. No matter what answer I give is wrong.
Was it Oregon Trail or like Spelevator?
That was such a huge time for PC gaming. There is no one standout.
Well,
I bet there's one though that sold.
I know
one
which
answer I'm looking for.
I know what answer you're looking for. I'm not going to give it to you. You're going to have to say it yourself.
Well, I was expecting somebody to yell out Doom or something, but because maybe culturally that's correct. But the answer I'm looking for is Myst, which was like the biggest selling PC game of the mid 90s until Sims rolled around and took the title. But yeah, Myst was like a huge thing in the 90s if you were playing PC games. We have the creators, Robyn and Rand Miller, on the show later today to talk about the game. And just as a heads up, this was before last week's announcement that the original Myst is being recreated for Oculus. So we don't really talk too much about that, but we do have a really good interview with them. Like, get this. Do you guys remember that those guys, the Myst creators, did a Gap ad? Did you guys know about this?
No.
What? No.
And that fascinates me, having met them and interviewed them and played many of their games. That, to me, is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Do we get to have that in the podcast too? Tell me we do.
I will see if it will be
the Gap ad. We'll do that. Yeah. You met a Gap model, Dan.
This is the first time I'm aware of that. So this is
amazing.
This podcast has already blown my mind. We haven't even gotten started yet.
We also talk a little bit about just how they had to hack their computers, like the links they had to go to actually create that game, which is fascinating. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, we want to talk about some games. We want to do the old playlist here. So let's go around the horn. Miller, what have you been up to? What have you been playing?
You know, I have been playing a lot of Hades, the new Supergiant game. That game is a lot of fun. I wrote a review for the website on that game, and then I kept playing after I wrote the review because it's a beast. It's a big game. It's a lot bigger than I thought it was. I mean, not that Supergiant's previous games, Bastion, Transistor, Pyre, I mean, those were pretty hefty indie games, right? But I think I went into an expectation with Hades that was going to be kind of similar, and that was even after, I'd played a lot of early access of Hades, and was like, oh, there's a lot here. But then, like, you dig into the final version, and there is a lot to do in that game.
Yeah, well, let's dive. I mean, I think for playlist, it's probably the one that we all four of us have been playing. And Dan, you just held up a sign that's saying it's game of the year ? Which I saw you tweeting about that. It sounds like you love it a lot too.
I am right now. It is absolutely my game of the year. I think this game is fascinating to me, and we don't have 3 or 4 hours to talk about it. So I've tried to come up with a way to summarize one of the reasons why I think it is so fascinating to me, and that is cohesion. I think when you play a lot of other games, you get the sense that, this department made this aspect of the game. This department made that aspect of the game. When you look at Hades, from the art to the music to the story to the gameplay, everything seems like it's in the exact place that it should be in this ancient Greek roguelike. And as a huge roguelike fan already, I found it fascinating that the tools this game has for players who might not even like roguelikes to be able to enjoy it. And I think it's certainly even outside of action roguelikes. I think it's my favorite action roguelike for sure. But in the entire roguelike genre, I think it has the best story and coming up with fascinating conceits behind that story. I find myself doing the side quests and side development well into my 18th victory as I currently stand.
Congrats.
And I'm still learning and discovering more every single run.
Now, you mean mechanically, or you mean like story-wise?
Both. It's fascinating. As you develop I'm going to let Miller go here in a second. I'm sorry.
Go for it.
But as you continually develop more options, you're gonna keep unlocking stuff. Like techniques that you use during your first 5 wins will be very different from techniques you use in your later wins, because it's likely that you've entered the Pact of Punishment system, which will basically give you new bosses and new experiences to your liking, essentially. While you fish, no less. Anyway, Miller, take it away.
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I mean, I think the thing that fascinates me in this game is the way that it hides its roguelite nature behind this great storytelling, right? Like, if you didn't know that the concept of what a rogue style game was, I think this would just feel like a natural flow. And that's because they do such a great job of integrating story and integrating the things that you choose to do into just the flow of what's happening. There's I talk about it in the review that there's, you meet the character of Sisyphus in this game, who, if anybody knows their Greek mythology, he's the guy who's like endlessly pushing the boulder up the hill. But they do something kind of fun with that character where they make him kind of good natured, and he's sort of fine with this task, right? He's like, oh, things happen, and he's just resigned himself to just like, this is his lot in life. And the game has this quality too, right? Like, you are Sisyphus in a way, right? Like, you're this character who you're this person who's going through endless cycles of repeats through this story, but you're kind of fine with it, and you're fine with it because they've done such a good job of sort of slowly introducing new elements of that story. And on top of that, with the gameplay, they've found ways to consistently add new dynamics to play. Whether it's that early on, it's just by unlocking the new weapons, but then it's later on, it's unlocking the different aspects of those weapons. And even after you've done that and you've honed in on some favorites, let's say you really like the spear, and you even maybe particularly like a particular aspect of the spear, you're then on every single run, you're waiting to find out how your spear is going to be different this time, right? It's going to feel, because of the boons that you get from these different gods as you go through your run, it maintains this sense of novelty. I think the only place that I separate from Dan a little bit about the game is that for me it's stretched a little bit too thin, which is the other thing I brought up in the review. I think for somebody who really, really likes that long-term investment roguelike, it's going to be magical, as I think it kind of has been for Dan. For me, there were times once I got to the, I put dozens of hours into this game, and I was still at times feeling like I wanted to have a wrap up to both the main storyline and some of the side storylines. And the game really, really asks that you wait for that for a long, long time. And I think it's not fundamentally a good thing or a bad thing. But it might be for certain individuals, right? For some people, they're going to go in with an expectation that the game is this is kind of like Pyre. I really love Pyre. I love the way they did story in that, and expect to be able to put a similar amount of time in. It's a lot more than that, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're saying, like, how many runs do you think you need to do? How many completed runs do you think you need to do to really wrap up the story? Because Dan, you're saying you did 18 already.
That depends what story you want to wrap up. Honestly, there are multiple threads which are independent of the main storyline, and that depends how much investment you put into them over your playthrough. So let's say you really like Thanatos. You're going to want to work your relationship with him and see where that leads, because it leads to very interesting places. Same with Achilles. Same with many of the other guys, or Orpheus and the Orpheus romance chain, sort of, so to speak. I don't want to spoil anything, but if you know Greek legends, a lot of them are here, and there's lots of really cool stuff in there threads for you to pull on if you want to. Mm-hmm. Well, of course, the core is always getting another run down and defeating the final boss. Anyway, yeah.
I mean, that one, for that main run, to answer your question, Ben, there are 10 completions basically that you need to do. I think it's important to understand that. I mean, they're not upfront about that, and I hope that doesn't come across as a spoiler to folks.
It was a surprise for me. I didn't know that like that time was going to be the time I got credits, so I was quite surprised.
Yeah, it's interesting too, just for me. So I've been playing it quite a bit. Not I've like 12 hours compared to yours, but I finished it once, and so I'm like, that was fun. I felt good, and it kind of like opens up all this other stuff you can start doing. Roguelike, keep playing the game, but I didn't get a sense of like, how much more I need to play. So I haven't touched it in the last 2 days, but I'm kind of wondering if I should go back because like things feel somewhat incomplete. Yeah, I don't know.
I think you're articulating a very real dilemma that players of this game are going to have, which is like, how much investment do you want to have? And I think they've built it a little bit to allow for that, right? Like, you could say that you've beaten the game now, and you could step away. Like, maybe you don't especially care about the stories that are playing out, or you don't especially love the action or whatever. So they do have that sense of like, you know what? I fought my way out of hell, right? There's then the threshold of like, you know what? I want to see the main storyline resolve, and that's these sort of 10 runs that you need to like successfully do. And then beyond that, there's more. There's a sort of epilogue story to open up. There's all these like side threads that you can open up. And that's a job of potentially hundreds of hours, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think depending on how you might approach it,
No, I mean it
or
makes
how good you are.
It's just hearing that I need to do 9 more runs, completed runs to do it, like, kind of makes me like, do I want to put that time in? I don't know, because they do a good job of wrapping things up, but I'm not wholly satisfied story wise. On the flip side, though, I love the action. Like the game does it reminds me a little bit of Dead Cells, not mechanically necessarily, but Dead Cells has the thing of like the moment to moment action in that game felt so good and tight that I didn't care that I was replaying the same areas over and over again. And Hades has that kind of like feel of like, I really like the combat. There's like at least 6 different weapons. And even in those, like the weapons are so malleable depending on like what the pickups and upgrades you get. So there's so much diversity to the combat that I enjoy diving in and just ripping through a level and tearing dudes up. So that's mechanically it's been fun. It'd be a good game to like, blow off some steam one night when I come home. I come home from work.
I think one of the other things they do that's really interesting that some people maybe don't know about with the game, even if you've already been playing it, is their approach to God mode. That's kind of an in joke to the game, because the game is that you're a god playing with other gods. Turning that on isn't exactly the same as what it would be in another game where you're just like, oh, well, now I just breeze through everything. Instead, what it's doing is giving you increased damage resistance that moves up every time you die. And so it's a way of, like, in your case, Ben, if you wanted to just like, you know what, I want to keep going and I still want it to be this like hardcore challenge to even see if I get through the run, right? Because it's hard. I mean, it's a challenging game. Then you do that. But if instead you get to a point where you're like, well, this is cool, but now I want to like increasingly, I want to win, right? Like I want to get through these runs. Then one way that you can kind of do that and give yourself a better shot at that is to turn on that God mode with the knowledge that every time you die, your chance that you're going to do better the next time is going up. Right.
Yeah.
Which is a kind of a fun way to change things up for people.
For sure. Alex, is somebody who's still early on in your journey, are you early on? I think you made it to the last boss at least once, right?
Correct.
But are you excited to keep going? You think you're in for the long haul on this?
Hell yes. This game caught me off guard in such a crazy way. Because I'm really not a roguelite guy. I discovered Dead Cells this year, and that totally like sunk into my skin, and I played it like that every night. And Hades is doing the same thing. I'm curious, did all of you play on PC?
I played on PC.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Because I'm playing it on Switch, and I don't know what Supergiant did, but they should be applauded for it to make this game run so smoothly on both. I've played a lot of handheld and a lot on my TV, and just it doesn't matter. Like there's maybe been times where it chugs, maybe during like the Bone Hydra fight where like everything is on screen, but they've done such a good job of, and they needed to for that to be successful on the Switch, and I think they've knocked it out of the park.
Hold on, do you think they made some kind of deal with the devil? Is that what happened here?
Well, yeah, they had to get the licensing deal.
Oh, yeah, of
They get
course.
a license for
Hades is just handing it out, you know. I can echo what you guys have said. I'm in the Dan camp with the story. I'm shocked at how into the story I am, because I think I came to this with the expectation of like, I'm excited for this combat system. I'm excited to see how this drags me in. But the characters are so good and the voice actors are so good. And I think we mentioned it for a second, but the way the music ramps up in certain situations and how it just complements what's on screen is beautiful. And I've been listening to the soundtrack on Spotify, and this is a game that you guys have talked about how we can play it for 60, 70 hours or whatever. I'm loving the fact that after dinner, like, I can go play 2 runs, feel satisfied, put it back down, but also know that, okay, tomorrow I'm picking up the shield tomorrow, or, you know, and I'm going to try that out and see how far I can get in that run. So I'm absolutely loving it. It is in my top 10, no question. I'm curious, what weapons have you guys found the most success with? Because for me, the spear and the gauntlets are like god tier. Like I get the furthest, and I love those weapons. But
the spear's really good. I like the shield a lot too. I like that Captain America throw you can do. There's an upgrade where it hits like more dudes, and like that was some of my best successes was with that. And then also like the last weapon, the gun. I don't like the way it works, but actually that's how I beat the game, was with that thing. So it seems like it's good.
Interesting.
I don't know. What do you
I think they're all pretty good. I've found excitement and fun with all of them. I think the spear is a good early one to get good at. That spin attack can really save the day in more than a few circumstances. But it's a credit to the game, I think, that over the course of play, there are weapons that early on I'd almost dismissed. It's like, I don't think I like this one, that I would come back to once I knew some of the enemy types better and I knew better how to like manage my runs, that I would come to those and be like, wow, this is a really great weapon, and I can do well with this. Yeah, it's a fascinating game. To your point, Alex, one of the other things that's really cool is that it's not only that the characters are compelling and that these Greek mythology nods work so well. It's also that Supergiant has done something that they've often managed in their previous games, which is to make the themes and the characters feel relevant in a modern context. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find much more ancient storylines to be tapping into than what they've done here. But it really, it ultimately feels a lot like a modern family TV drama in some ways, like in a good way. I really like the ways that they paint these different characters. Hades as this overbearing father, Zagreus as this guy who's just really struggling to find his own identity away from his father's influence. That you have all these different characters that fulfill some pretty important ideas about where somebody could be in their life, and they manage to sneak that in even with minor characters. You know, characters who you only meet in brief, like some of the Olympian gods that you meet who give you these boons. Yeah.
And jumping off of that too, I think there's another world where this game is not as self-aware and willing to play with these archetypes, that because I think there's another world where, you know, they try to tell a more like early God of War, like first God of War type of stories where everyone's upset and the world's ending and stuff, but these characters and like the gods were petty, you know. That was the thing. I can't remember if it was Hades, I can't remember who says it in the game, maybe it was Achilles, but like he's like, yeah, you are a god because gods try to kill other gods, like, and that's what we do. And I think that level of awareness of these characters make these make this story shine even more. And I just didn't expect that in a roguelite.
Yeah, well, that's Hades.
Okay, so the weapons
Reviews
that I
up on the
use.
site.
Oh yeah, Dan.
No, yeah, I like. I'll keep it short. The spear, sword, and the shield were my favorites. Obviously, the melee stuff, but I'm still getting used to the other aspects. And by the way, Alex, again, I could gush over this game for hours. But if you like the music associated with the gameplay, just wait. You'll have to play quite a bit more to unlock the Megalovania equivalent in the game, which was very, very cool and surprising. All right.
Interesting.
Anyway, there you go.
No, that's good. Good reviews on the site. Miller, you gave it what, an 8.5, I believe.
I did.
But obviously, a little more. Sometimes you can boil things down to a score, and like it kind of says it all. And like in this case, I don't think it does. I think it's a little more
Yeah.
complicated based on our discussion, obviously. So if you're at all curious, I think it's worth checking out. It's a good game. Cool. And then Miller, you also wanted to talk about 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. Am I saying that right?
I think so. It's an unusual game, but from a developer that I really like, and the game surprised me, and I think it surprised our reviewer. Joe played it for our review, and we both came away like being like, I don't know exactly why I like this so much, but it's quite cool. Vanillaware is the developer behind games like Odin Sphere and Dragon's Crown. They have a very particular art style that shines through in all of their projects, and that is maintained here. But the game that they've made this time is this sort of homage to all things sci-fi, and I mean that. Oh, I mean that almost literally. Like almost every sci-fi trope you can think of has been squeezed into this game, from Godzilla kaiju monster stuff to time travel to the Terminator to just giant mechs. I mean, it's got everything in the kitchen sink thrown in a very unusual mix of genres. It's kind of it's like a visual novel mixed with a light tactical strategy game. You're playing through these unique storylines for literally 13 different protagonists, and jumping back and forth between different points in their stories, and they interweave with each other. They're all like these kind of teenage characters who live across multiple time periods, right? So some of it happens back during World War II, some of it happens in the 80s, some of it happens in the distant future. And so at any one time, not only do you not know exactly where you are in the story, but you're jumping into different points where for one character, it might be in their future, but for a different character, it's in their past. It's really crazy, but it all kind of works and makes for a story that I think is fun to follow. The strategy stuff is not the most amazing part of it, but it does add a certain like game layer to things where you're at least feeling like you're doing something. In the visual novel stuff, it's more like you're just kind of like moving your character through the world and advancing the dialogue threads and stuff. And yet somehow I really have been digging it. I think if you like Vanillaware's previous stuff, it would be worth a look.
That's interesting. Do you know if Joe's review is up yet?
I believe so. Yeah, I think he gave it an 8, something like that. Yeah, it's an unusual game, but one that I think might surprise some people.
In terms of playlist, hey, how about Star Wars? Had an itch for some Star Wars content, so I booted up The Sims 4 Journey to Batuu.
Hey, there you
I don't
go.
think
Oh,
I pronounced that
man.
correctly. It was. I don't think it's good. I had an itch for The Sims as well, and I should have just played normal Sims, because like they take you to. It's Batuu, which is based on I should say the theme park is based on the one in the Disney parks. That's
It's
like
like Galaxy's
Batuu.
Edge stuff, right?
Exactly. It's the
Yeah.
Galaxy's Edge stuff. Thank you. And I had been earlier this year, back in the olden times,
Yeah.
which was a lot of fun. So it was kind of fun to go and visit that. But like, there's nothing there gameplay wise. It's all kind of mission based. You don't really build a home or anything. which is what I thought I was going to be doing. I thought I'd like build a shack and like become
Wait,
a Jedi
if you're
or
not
something.
building a home, what are you doing in a Sims game? You just literally wandering the theme park?
He's making the castle run in less than 12 parsecs. What else are you doing? Come on.
It's totally a vacation where you're visiting Batuu like it's a real place.
Okay.
And so you're like going to the cantina and hanging out with people, and you can talk to people about the rebels, and you can talk, or the First Order, or the Resistance, I should say.
So is it like basically a marketing vessel for Galaxy's Edge?
I don't even know if I would say that. I mean,
Okay.
it's definitely time to tap into that, but it's not like I felt like go to Disney now, you idiot. I didn't feel like I was getting marketed to.
You're never going to feel it. If it's done well, you're not going to feel it, Ben. So
that's right. I'll feel it in my soul. Which is where Star Wars
did you build a lightsaber in the game?
Well, you can maybe do that, but I didn't get far enough. Like it's not compelling enough to really like keep you playing is the problem. So maybe nah, I'm not going to fool myself. I don't think I'm going back to that game. If you want a Star Wars game, go replay Jedi Order or something. I don't know.
We got a maybe cool Star Wars game coming up, right? We hope.
Oh, Squadrons? Yeah, hopefully we'll be talking about that.
Crossing my fingers.
Next week.
Yeah, for sure. But Alex, Dan, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about, or was Hades mostly what you've been playing?
I've been playing Hades. Hades is godlike. It's the best pun I've ever made. Anyway, no, it was great. Hades, it's all Hades all the time.
Yeah,
Hades has consumed my playing at waking hours. Like,
I mean, Hades is just a huge game. It just takes a long time.
Yeah,
I think that makes sense that it would be consuming certain people. And it certainly was while I was reviewing it.
And to use that one conversation point as my other game that I'm talking about on the playlist,
wait a minute. Did you trick us into talking about something else?
Give me like 2 seconds here. The thing for me about Hades is, well, Miller's correct. You do have to do a lot of runs. To me, it wasn't like I was like, oh gosh, I have to keep doing runs to proceed the story, because you do. But to me, it was like, wow, what am I going to do this run? How am I going to break the game this time? Like the whole thing of a roguelike, right? The story was, to me, like a delicious side appetizer to the main course, which is the gameplay, which is like every run, I'm like, okay, what do I start with? What do I start with? What am I going to make? What am I going to do? What am I going to build? How crazy are we going to get? And it's going to always get nuts, right? Even if I start with the fishing talent, it's like, whoa, 20% more fish? Okay, how do I combine this with like trips to chaos so I can get the chaos fish? All right, so I can min-max this freaking run, tooth and nail, baby. And it's just like, let's get crazy. And it's like, as you play through that game, like the abilities that you have on tap that you understand how to access during your first 10 hours are much different than the next 10 hours when you can start unlocking reliable duos and legendaries and other crazy traits that you don't get to see much of in the early hours. Just being like, okay, I need to get Aphrodite with that other god. That way I can get that duo ability and combine it with, Athena, and then do some crazy deflection stuff. I basically can't be hurt, and I'm dishing out 1 billion damage a hit. What's up? What's up now, Hades? And it's like, that's a cool run. And you're like, well, how could I do that even better? Let's find out. And then you just hop into another one. Just keep going. Just keep going. You look at the clock. You're like, whoa, I've been playing for 3 hours. Cool.
Yeah. It does have, I think, Alex, you said like, oh, it has that little bit of like, you can pick it up for a couple of sessions and be done. But I've done that a couple times where like, oh, I'll just play for like 5 minutes or so. And then it's like, one more run. And then it's like,
well, it's very easy to do.
In the morning.
Yeah. That's the mark of a great game, though, is just you could do it for 30 minutes. You could do it for 30 hours. And love it.
Cool. Well, that wraps up the playlist for today. So let's talk to Robyn and Rand Miller, and we'll be right back. And welcome back to the Game Informer Show. I'm joined by two very special guests, luminaries in the game industry, let's say, Robyn and Rand Miller, the co-creators of Myst. What do you guys refer to yourselves as these days?
Old men. I like that. Except my wife doesn't like that, but yes, I constantly do that. Yeah.
As long as she remains a young woman.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's perfect then. Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Well, yeah.
Hey, Ben.
Yeah. Hey, it's a pleasure to have you guys. Nice talking to you. Big fans of the games you guys have made, and obviously they've left a lasting legacy on the industry, which I think is no doubt. And so, yeah, just kind of breezy talk about your history, which probably isn't a breezy thing to really do, honestly, but I'd love to go back in time with you guys and talk about the formation of Zion, how you guys started that. Like, I heard you pick the name because you thought it was something that you could do anything with it, like with a name like that, and then, you know, you gravitated towards games. Is that story pretty true? Like you wanted to do books or something?
I mean, I think we liked that name because it was simple and it was a real word. And I don't know how Robin felt. I always thought that it was very not limiting. Like, unlike naming your company Southwest Airlines and then flying to Europe, it felt like Cyan, we could go into anything. We started in games and software, but it just felt like that, just in case we needed to be flexible, that would be handy. So yeah, go ahead, Robin. I don't know how
And
you
in
felt
fact,
about it.
well, I was going to say, I think that's exactly why we named it Cyan. And some of the companies that we really admired were companies that didn't make games at all, and we even made a couple of utilities. We ventured into that in the very beginning, and they failed miserably. But that was, we made a try at it, and our first logo was kind of corporate looking. And I think that's what we were feeling, was like, we weren't sure if our games were going to succeed. I mean, our very first game wasn't even under the Cyan moniker. It was under a different company, under the game, under the logo Prologue, under the name Prologue was the name of a software company that Rand already, I think, what was that, Rand?
I just did software consulting. We did it there. Yeah, boring stuff. Yeah.
So after our first game, which was The Manhole, after that it met with some success, we decided, let's actually have a game company. And we changed it to Cyan. But one thing that always was very attractive to, one thing we were always really into, since, because we loved, I think, the Macintosh so much, we loved the software that was coming out for the Macintosh, was the idea of great interface. And we shared concept, ideas of interface. We read books on interface. And so, I think when we made our own these little utilities, that excited us a lot, just because it was a chance to create something other than a game and see, what we could do in terms of interface. It wasn't just like we were only, in other words, it wasn't like we were just only focused on the game world. So we just didn't know. We didn't know what would take off. I think our real passion was that sort of fantastic realm,
making worlds,
storytelling realm.
Yeah,
making worlds.
Well, that's really what they almost felt like interactive worlds more than games early on, right? Like you mentioned the Manhole. The first game I played was Cosmic Osmo, which I had a lot of fun with, but it wasn't like, there weren't real puzzles in the traditional sense. It was kind of like you click on things, you interact with stuff. They were kind of geared towards kids, right? So what made you guys want to transition towards something a little bit more serious, like with Myst?
We had a lot of discussions about that. We felt like Robin and I have described it as evolving what we did, I think, where the Manhole was very rudimentary. It felt like a world, but it was about as rudimentary as you can get. You move from place to place. The interactivity was minimal because we felt like we were just learning it. Cosmic Osmo was more sophisticated. We'd learned a lot and could make a much more interactive world. We even tried a little story in with it. There was some backstory. It felt like some things had happened before you got here, and there was things going on in the background, and that was kind of fun. And then we stepped it up to Spelunks, which was, it was educational, but not really. It was just kind of a fun chance for us to play with more interactivity and add some color and make the worlds have even a more of a backstory to them. And so it was just over time, the worlds got more sophisticated, and we knew where this was going. Eventually, there would be a world that would be sophisticated enough where adults would it could be more satisfying for adults, for an older audience. And we did a proposal for one early on called a Gray Summons that got turned down, but it was good because the timing wouldn't have been right anyway. And then Myst came along, and the timing was right. And yeah, we had kind of used everything we learned to continue evolving and experiment in Myst.
What was Gray Summons about? What would that have been different than Myst in some way?
I think in a lot of ways it was similar. We wanted to accomplish the same kinds of things we wanted to accomplish in Myst, like having characters that you interacted with, and having some sort of meaningful relationship with these characters. And we had a lot of ambitious ideas, like things we were going to do, and we had them all written down on this proposal. And in a way, well, I totally remember when this was rejected, feeling like, okay, good, we don't have to do that. Because, I mean, we probably could have, I know we would have done something if it was approved, but
it was ambitious.
It was just really ambitious for its time. And it was just like a couple years later that we got the money to make Myst. And I think in those 2 years, the technology had moved forward enough to allow us to do all those same exact things, but we could accomplish them then. And those things were things like the 3D software, QuickTime. QuickTime was like invented while we were doing Myst. And we didn't know, when we began Myst, for example, we didn't know how we were going to do all the video. And then during the production, QuickTime just sort of showed up, and it was a lifesaver. But yeah, if we had done that 2 years before, it would have maybe been a little bit of a disaster for us. So, and it would have certainly been a completely different product.
Oh yeah, I imagine. Yeah. Well, I had heard this crazy story that when you guys were working on Myst early on, the Mac you were using was really a black and white Mac, but you guys had hacked it so it could run color or something. Did you guys feel like you were just scraping by most of the time, just using whatever you could?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Those were, I mean, we got what for us was a lot of money at the, to make Myst, but it really required a lot of ingenuity and low-end systems to do it as well. So for example, the Mac you're talking about was, I think it was Robyn's old SE that you could open up and buy this hack that clipped onto the actual chip, the Motorola chip, and had it, you drill a hole in the back and have an output, and it outputs to a color monitor. So it you got color out of an old SE. Now, as time went on, we used some of that money we got to buy better equipment, and that was enabling and awesome, as we went forward, to have machines that were a little stouter and not so kludged.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, did that seem scary at the time? You're just like, well, I hope this works. And do we really know what we're doing?
I think
the whole thing was terrifying to an extent. Mm-hmm. And in fact, one of the most terrifying things was when we started. I was just actually reminding Rand of this story the other day. But when we started, we didn't have any idea how we were going to accomplish the video, or I mean, the graphics. So everything we had done up to that point was hand drawn. And by hand drawn, I mean hand drawn on the computer with a mouse. And when we started Myst, there was sort of just the assumption I had made that that's the kind of visuals we would do. We had done a little bit with 3D graphics, but it was the power wasn't there to make all of the graphics in Myst, or so I had assumed. And so I was looking at a lot of sources for inspiration and making that same assumption, like, okay, it's going to be this sort of hand-drawn look, but with this, these different, this different look to it. And I started drawing things, and I sat at a computer one day and put about 2 hours into really trying to make it work. But imagining how big this game was going to be,
Uh-huh.
Much bigger than anything we'd ever done. I mean, Cosmic Oz was a lot of drawings, but this was going to be more. We knew that. And I was just like beginning to sketch Myst Island. And after about 2 hours, I realized, what have we gotten ourselves into? This is nuts. I'm not going to be able to do this. This is crazy. How are we going to, like, how am I going to hand render all of this? And that's when I began to play with Stratavision 3D, hoping that, can I possibly create 3D islands, something so big on a Mac?
This was at the time where what people were creating, it was really unique to have 3D rendering software. This is not real-time software. This is, it spends an hour rendering your ray traced image. But what people were doing was like mirrored spheres or glass spheres on a checkerboard, because that was fun computery. And here Robyn's going, I wonder if we can do an island instead of a mirrored sphere.
And the kinds of things we had rendered up to that point were things like, that literally a table with a mirror, with a magnifying glass, and typical things you think of.
Uh-huh.
So the idea of doing an entire island was a little insane, but I gave it a try. It puts these trees on it, which were, go back and look at Myst Island, there's just a lot of primitives, just cones and cubes and all of these things that are just as simple could be. And to actually go, the first time I was able to do that, and then to see, this could work. This actually works. It kind of blew my mind, and we knew immediately. I sent those images to Rand, and we knew immediately, like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to make the game.
That's crazy. Yeah, you guys did something during development of Myst that I think is very smart. You guys did a D&D session where you sort of played through the game early on just to see like what the wrinkles were, which I think is really good idea. Like, what came out of that session? Like, how was that valuable to you?
Boy, yeah. Well, we had both played our brother was into D&D, and so we had played D&D previously as kids, and I think it was more intriguing for us to make places than to play the world. So but make D&D places, even, make worlds that way. So anyway, when it came time to test it, even before we had put any or rendered any images after our design, we sat down with the first few employees that we picked up to help us make this, and said, okay, we're gonna describe where you're at, and then you tell us what you want to do, just like what you would do in D&D, except there were no monsters or dice rolling. We would describe the puzzles. Robyn would draw out, if necessary, a little diagram of what the puzzle looked like, and then they would tell us what they were going to do. And it was invaluable, because we got to see where they were making the right mental connections and where they weren't making the right mental connections, and then adjust the design a bit at that point.
And I think it's also, I'm going to make another, just jump backwards a little bit here. One of the inspirations from to Myst was D&D. Rand and I, because our brother was really into D&D, we would sit in on some of those sessions, and of course, D&D is, when it's played a certain way, I think you really begin to visualize environments.
If you have a good DM, yeah.
If you have a good DM, and it was really, really fun. We would talk about way back when we played, like, this would be so cool if there weren't the monsters and there wasn't all the rolling of the dice, and if it was, more cinematic. And I think that started to kind of start a ball rolling, along with a lot of other inspirations. That was kind of one element that later became Myst. That was one part of the inspiration.
Yeah. Well, skipping ahead just a tiny bit,
Mhm.
Myst eventually became a runaway success, selling 6 million copies, which would made it the highest selling PC game of all time for the era until The Sims came around. But why do you guys think it was such a success? Like, what about the market was missing that made Myst such a good fit?
So I think it's one of those things that was the right place, right time. I mean, and
Mhm.
we were very fortunate. I
Mhm.
mean, we put a lot of work into it and a lot of effort, but you can't plan success like that. Sometimes the stars align, and I think they did. I think some of it was
Mhm.
people were getting computers that could that they were that were just on the edge of being able to do amazing things with visuals and sound and audio and music and all those things that were in Myst. And
Yeah.
they picked up the box and they saw, wait, these pictures are actually going to be on my screen, and they were pre-rendered, so they looked somewhat photographic, and so it didn't look like other games that were available. It wasn't shooting monsters, it wasn't starting over, it was a safe thing for anyone to buy and play, and even people who weren't gamers. So I think it just caught the right wave
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
when it came out.
Yeah. And I mean, we were very, very lucky because there weren't a lot of games back then. I mean, the competition was next to nothing. So no, it's not like that was some big planned thing. I mean, we were kind of ignorant going into it. We were just making this world we wanted to create, but we did it at the exact point in time that was that just fed into it becoming a huge success because technology was exploding at that point in time and people wanted something to play. So I mean, if Myst came out today, it would never be that because the competition is like insane.
Mhm.
It was the new technology and there was not much to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys must have been riding high. I mean, if memory serves, you guys were in a Gap ad, I believe, which is crazy. Like, did you guys feel like rock stars?
That's crazy for us. I think looking back at that Gap ad is so bizarre. It's so surreal. That's the surrealist world that became our world. Whatever. It's like I remember that trip. They flew us to New York. They put us in. It was so bizarre. You remember that, Robin? I mean, it was just like,
Of course, I remember. Yeah, of course. I
oh,
mean,
it's
and
like
who
another
was the
life, though.
photographer? It was like a famous photographer.
Oh yeah,
And we didn't even know that until much later. But
Richard Avedon.
Richard Avedon, yeah.
Yeah.
And I just think in general, it never, the idea of us feeling like rock stars didn't really, I think we were fortunate because we were in Spokane. And so there wasn't a lot of people around to,
It's the only time Robin would say it's fortunate to be in Spokane.
Right. We didn't receive a lot of accolades,
Yeah.
Because we were just sort of in a bubble.
And we grew up in a very normal household, and so in some ways, Myst was done because we were naive enough to think, well, yeah, we can do this. And I think that naivety kept us a little bit from being rock stars as well. Like, well, cool, we did that. Oh my gosh, it took off. That's crazy. And so it was, maybe we're a couple of okey dokes or whatever, but when we did it.
Now, there was one thing that happened to me, and I don't know if this happened to Rand, was just I was often overwhelmed with the sheer amount of people who had played it. Like it was hard for me to wrap my head around. Like, oh my, millions of people have played this game. It doesn't mean they all got to the end. It doesn't mean they all actually, were able to get off the first island. But it was really difficult for me to even comprehend the numbers, and I couldn't understand that at the time. And as it was exploding, because we really had this idea that we were hoping we would sell enough to be able to continue to make another game.
100,000 units. I remember us discussing, like, man, if we could sell
Yeah.
100,000, that would be amazing. Yeah.
So the idea that it was selling in the millions was like, it was just like that visually was hard for me to grasp.
Yeah, it's insane.
It still seems like another world, because when it's like two different worlds. Live a normal life, but when you talk to somebody and they go, "Oh my gosh, I know Myst," you're like, "Oh, really? That's crazy." It's still, because it was so prevalent, they're just finding people that played it and knew it was always seemed like a surprise.
Yeah.
Even to this day. So yeah.
Well, now it's been like more than 25 years later, so I'm sure even more people have played it. And in fact, not just played it, but like people are inspired to make new games out of it. There's been a whole slew of games that are inspired by Myst, like Jonathan Blow's The Witness come to mind. Do you guys ever take time to go back and play some of the games that were inspired by Myst?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the most humbling things, and I think this documentary that Philip's doing is hopefully going to point out that thread of inspiration that's so interesting in humans. Like Robyn and I were inspired by various things that drove us forward, whether it's Jules Verne or Star Wars or whatever. They're the things that you kind of lock onto and go, "Oh my gosh, these are like cool worlds," and or D&D or whatever that push us forward. But then to find out at the end of Myst that it actually inspired a new group of people who went on to make movies or games or whatever, that's so amazing, but also so natural, because we understand it, because that's, you know, where we came from, and we understand how that inspiration works. So yeah, it's a very cool aspect of what happened. Yeah, and always surprising, you know, when you find a person now who says, "Oh yeah, I went into CG because of Myst." What? That's amazing. Yeah.
My career is dedicated to you, like that kind of thing.
We do play those games. I mean, I played The Witness. I just got done playing Half-Life Alyx, and I don't know if that was inspired by Myst, but I just love VR, and that just blew my mind. I love that game.
Yeah, I mean, that game is incredible.
Interesting. It's interesting. I when we made Myst, there weren't as many games to play. We weren't playing a lot of games. We were aware of games, but now, of course, there are so many games, and I'm playing a lot more games and really enjoying them. I'm into games now.
You had to make a game to get into it.
About you, Rand. And I have grown kids, and I play games with my kids, and I'm kind of blown away by games now. I really love them. So it's a different, it's just things are so totally different. So.
Sure. Well, you guys mentioned the documentary. What's the story there? You guys are making a documentary, or somebody's making a documentary about Myst, it sounds like, and you're helping out.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where Robyn and I did a talk in Brooklyn at a Kill Screen conference there, and it was years and years ago. And some guy in the audience came up to us afterwards, and just a nice guy. We had some stuff in common with him, and then he said, "Has anybody made a documentary of you?" And we were like, "No." And he said, "Well, I did Being Elmo," and he's done documentaries on like of the Beatles and Einstein. He was really, but on top of all that, he was a really nice guy, and we were like, "Sure." I mean, who wouldn't say, "Yeah, sure, make a documentary about us"?
Send it my way, man.
Yeah, that's right. So he's a huge Myst fan, and he found our story interesting and just wanted to document it. So for years now, that was 5 years ago, he's been filming what's been going on in our lives and asking us questions about the past and kind of plotting the course of how we did what we did with Myst and Riven and who it might have inspired and how we got inspired. And so it's kind of fun. I mean, we're only involved in that. We're kind of part of the subject matter, but it's another one of those weird, surreal things that has spun out of all this.
But I think the idea of his documentary, as he describes it, is to pull together all of the things that led up to Myst, like, basically, why did we create Myst? And which I like that concept rather than, the two wonderkins that, created.
Oh, no, I want the two wonderkins.
Well, right. Because I do believe that we were in the right time at the right place, and like with all of the technologies coming together, and who were those people that created those technologies? And we really were tool users, for example.
Yeah.
I don't think we would have ever, I know we would have never been able to make this thing if it weren't for those tools. Who were those people that created those tools?
They were our heroes at the time.
They were our heroes. Bill Atkinson was a hero of ours, and he created those tools that we would have been able to do nothing if we didn't have those tools.
Yep.
And that's just one example.
Who did Stratavision? Yeah,
exactly right.
Yeah.
So there's all of these disparate, elements that, whether it be interface design or all of these things, and he's going to go out, and Philip Shane, and he's going and trying to bring all of this together to show that Myst was the result of something, and all these threads, a web, and I really love that approach.
What's the name of this documentary? How can people check it out?
Well, right now I think it's just the Myst documentary.
It's clever.
And there's a Kickstarter. What do you know the Kickstarter website?
No, I'm sure if you just Google the Myst documentary, it'll come up.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll be able to find it.
Philip's doing a Kickstarter for it. There's a great Myst community. I mean, our fans are amazing. We've got the best fans in the world. And so he's kind of, in some ways, engaging that community to help make the documentary. And he's been part of it as well. So.
Sure. Well, what else are you guys up to? Anything else you want people to be aware of before you head out?
I'm working on a couple of projects, but I'm keeping them on the lowdown right now. So until they're ready.
Keep it secret. Keep it safe. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got a Kickstarter for a game called Firmament, which I think is a really fun. It's probably one of the best stories we've done. But yeah, we're just small and indie and scrappy and
hungry,
doing this for a living, which I can't believe I can still do this for a living. So,
yeah, that's great. Cool.
I'll take it over a banking.
Yeah, I bet. No joke. Yeah, me too. Well, Rand and Miller, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for joining us on the GI show.
Great.
We'll look forward to the documentary. Look forward to the whatever new projects you're working on and the new game. So sounds very cool. Thanks. Wonderful. And have a good day.
Thanks much, Ben.
Yeah. And stay tuned for community emails coming up. And welcome back to the Game Informer Show. The gang's all here, but no, wait a minute. Where'd Miller go? Oh, Jeff Cork, where did you come from?
Solved / created.
Hey. Were you so upset that you didn't get to talk about Mafia in the playlist that you had to?
It's literally all I want to do is talk about Mafia, the definitive edition.
Yeah, you've been playing that. What's the story there?
I played it.
Definitive?
Is it what?
Is it definitive?
It's definitive. It is a declarative statement. The statement is, I am Mafia. There you go. So if you want Mafia, that's a good way to get it. Yeah. Yeah, it's the definitive edition. So it's essentially Hangar 13 has rebuilt the entire game that came out in 2002 from the ground up, kind of incorporating a lot of the visual flair that the studio created with Mafia 3. I did not enter the game with any kind of nostalgia about the original. This was kind of my first exposure to the first Mafia game. And I did know that it is a beloved classic by a lot of people. They absolutely think it has one of the best stories of all time, and they just love it. I had a slightly different experience. I don't think it's particularly fun to play. I think the gunplay is really mushy and doesn't feel great. And I think the story, honestly, is kind of haphazard and all over the place. I think the characters, some of them are really fun and interesting and everything, but ultimately I don't think it gels together into an interesting narrative. I think more than anything, it just points to if this is held up as an example of great video game storytelling, just how much the medium has to go.
Wow. Yeah, because this game's over a decade old at least, right?
Almost 18 years old. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's that
Yeah.
old. Wow.
Yeah.
It's older than Alex.
Yeah, and I
Somehow,
can
that's a
understand like
crazy
some people may not like it because they're expecting like an open world like in the style of GTA where it's like constant side activities and you're creating mayhem and like your own stories and everything, and like the Mafia games are not about that. They are definitely like a very narrative driven experience where you're kind of guided from mission to mission, and that's telling a story. You could certainly explore the city, but it would be only for your own gratification. That like you would have to build your own fun there because there's very very little to do on the streets of Lost Heaven.
There's no Playboy magazines or collectibles or anything like that.
They do have collectibles, but they're largely in the locations of the missions, right? So like you're in the middle of shooting a rival gang leader and you're chasing him around and pausing to pick up like a pulp fiction magazine or something like that. You got sticky fingers, man. But I think it's an interesting idea to revisit that, but I don't think it's a fun or particularly good game.
I thought the whole point of this one though is that they were redoing everything. They were going to redo the gameplay. Really? So they just like, hey, we're going to redo it, but
yeah,
we're not going to make it better.
I'm sure that like some people will think that I'm absolutely insane, and I would invite them to check it out for themselves. And if they disagree, that's what's wonderful about this world that we all share.
That's what the internet's for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
Are you reviewing it then, Quark?
I did review it. Yeah.
What'd you give it?
Give it a 5.5. I really didn't like it. Like the gunplay is, I think the technical term is it doesn't feel good.
I like the term you used earlier. Mushy.
Yeah. Mushy. We'll say that it's mushy. It feels like your guns are like at the end of a yardstick or something. You know what I mean? Where like the cursor's just kind of floaty. There is some like lock and assist you could turn on and everything, but I think ultimately, open world games are not known for having tight moment to moment gunplay and everything like that. It's just kind of like a means to an end, and yeah, I don't know.
That's a bummer. Well, there you go. Mafia Definitive Edition.
Yep. There
Also,
you go.
Definitively, don't need to play it.
Yeah.
Not very definitive at all.
Forget about it. Do I have to block out or do I have to bleep assy? Is that a thing that I need to do? I don't know. I'll figure it out in post.
I think you get one in PG-13, right?
Yeah.
How many times have we said it now?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now we got a lot more blocking to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like just times 5. All right.
Hey, do you wise guys want to answer some emails?
Love it.
Hey,
let's do it. These are emails, words of wisdom, short stories, dares, whatever people send us, podcast@gameinformer.com. You send it to us. We read it sometimes on the air. So send us your stuff. We love it. Like this first one from Jared B. He says, greetings from Kansas City. With Mafia dropping the bombshell on Monday that they've acquired ZeniMax Media and Bethesda Studios.
Mafia?
The Mafia? Are you making a claim about Microsoft here? Or what's going on?
What's going on?
What are you talking about? Hey!
Hey! What did I say?
Hey, yo!
You said Mafia was owning Bethesda. Nah.
Oh, yeah. Well, that weird. Sorry. With Microsoft dropping the bombshell on Monday that they've acquired ZeniMax Media and Bethesda, I wanted to ask the panel what this means for next gen, and what is your overall opinion of Microsoft and Mafia?
I'm sorry.
I think it's a 5.5 if you ask me.
He goes on to say, he says another way of looking at it is if you don't currently have Game Pass, does this purchase put you over the fence? Like if you weren't on board with Microsoft and their Game Pass plan, which seems to be their strategy, is the acquisition of ZeniMax enough to make you want an Xbox?
I mean, so true confession, I am a Xbox PC Game Pass subscriber. I bought up like 2 years of it when it was cheap. So that's great. I plan to probably keep that forever. It'll be in my subscription wheelhouse. Probably till the end of time, considering they're going to keep making moves like this. Would it make me get a Game Pass now if I was not already invested into the system? No, I'd wait till the games were on it. What the Come on, that's the whole thing about it. You can buy in and buy out whenever you feel like it. That's the bonus of the on-demand game library that the Game Pass offers you.
Sure. I mean, overall though, like this is like a crazy smart move for Microsoft, right?
This is a giant acquisition, $7.5 billion. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of bones, a lot of clams for those of you out there. And what it signals to me is that further consolidation will come as they attempt to take over this segment of the industry, because that's the only way you do it, right? How do you make Netflix and games work? You got to own all the studios. If you don't, it doesn't work out. So you got to buy a bunch of them, and then eventually some other company will come along and start the competitive service, right?
Yeah, a lot of people online pointed out that Star Wars went for $4 billion.
Mhm.
That's how much Disney bought it for. What was that, like over 10 years ago now, at least?
Yeah, inflation,
And I don't know what inflation would account for, but I don't think it gets it up to $7 billion. So it's interesting just to see how much Microsoft is paying for here.
I haven't looked at the direct value of the company, but I'm hearing on the internet that they paid 2 to 3 times what the market value of the company was worth. You have to do that in a large buyout acquisition like that. So pay a premium to scoop the whole company up as a whole. What does that mean? It means like a lot of executives are going to get a lot of money. If you're, who knows about what's going to happen to everybody else, right? Obviously, the line that is said anytime this kind of thing happens is nothing will change. We're still the same company. Inevitably, there are many changes, and many people will move on, and that's just you can say whatever you want, but it's going to cause changes. Absolutely. Are the products going to be exclusive to Microsoft's platforms? I guess that's what everybody else is talking about, right? Are these?
Well, apparently, Starfield is not. Starfield's a PlayStation game, PlayStation exclusive. If I read that right, which is crazy.
So
I don't know if that's a timed exclusive or something.
This kind of stuff gets really complicated because of whatever deals were made in the past. Moving forward with this kind of deal, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what the contracts were drawn up as, all right, but they'll work it out. Money will exchange hands. We'll figure things out. They'll figure that whole thing out, and we'll be the last to know. But that's how that always goes, right?
I always think back to when Microsoft bought Minecraft, and now Minecraft is still on everything, which is kind of crazy. Like they didn't absorb that and say like, no, this is just ours now.
Right.
So it's possible that they could do that with similar stuff that Bethesda's been making. But they own the Elder Scrolls franchise. They own Fallout now. They own Doom. Like they own some pretty big properties.
Huge properties. Tons of giant IPs. And huge companies, right? Like the ZeniMax, Bethesda are enormous. What they do with them again is this. I think this is a high level consolidation toward further goals in the service space. To me, that's what this signals. Everyone keeps yammering on about how about Game Pass. This is one element that will work in there. You've got to have the stuff on Game Pass to make Game Pass that value. Whether or not you want to, you can continue the console war. That's the thing. You can do that if you want. But eventually, that war has ended in my eyes already, and Microsoft is trying something different. They're going up into the cloud with the other service-oriented stuff, like the Amazons and the Googles and all this other stuff. They're creating a product out of air that they're going to sell everyone, and everyone's going to have a subscription on, and we're all going to own it. We're all going to be in the system. It's going to be great. Yeah.
I do quickly want to interject here on the earlier point about Starfield. This is actually from former GI staffer Imran Khan. He tweeted out, he said, fun note, Sony had been negotiating timed exclusivity on Starfield as recently as a few months ago. Going to guess either those talks are done or price suddenly went way, way up. So Starfield, I think, is still could be on Xbox, but
okay, so it's still a question mark there.
Yeah,
not
it's exclusive,
but
yeah, I can't imagine if they're branding it as their next big pillar alongside Fallout and Elder Scrolls. I don't think that would be locked on PlayStation now that Xbox has it. But I don't know.
If they want to make those things exclusive, they will. If they don't want to make them exclusive because they think they can make more by letting it go on those other platforms too, they will. It doesn't matter to them. They're looking for the bottom line. It's not some this holy war that is imagined is really just all about the bottom line and stock prices and other finance things. The troops on the ground have no idea what is going on. The fight is being had in the heavens by celestial beings, while the troops on the ground are going to murder each other over which console's better. They don't care.
And who are we in this analogy, Dan?
We're some cool dudes. We're some cool dudes talking about video games.
That's right. We're on the
Wow.
porch sipping our iced teas. Cork, do you have any thoughts on this? Like, are you more or less excited for an Xbox now? Or are you kind of disappointed that you can't play Elder Scrolls on PlayStation, presumably?
Ultimately, I'm getting both, so it doesn't matter to me where. I guess the biggest change is going to be what controller is going to be in my hand when I play these inevitable releases. You know, I don't have
You
a
hear that,
dog in that
Microsoft?
fight.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't
You blew
matter.
$7 billion for nothing.
Don't nobody care.
I think it's just the beginning. You're going to see a couple other scoop ups happen within the next 6 months to a year.
You know,
Well,
like
the other-
Microsoft set that in motion, a few years ago. They've been on a big buying spree.
Yeah,
as
but
of
they've
late
got-
anyway.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. I mean, they already have a very, very considerable stable of studios, right? This is just adding like a really big one.
Yeah.
Like they've already got a really good thing. They're building a farm, right? Now they're adding like a whole nother section on that farm, and I can't imagine it stops there.
Well,
I
what's
would say
amazing to me is they already have Oblivion, or sorry, not Oblivion. I'm infected with
No.
whatever Alex had. What
They have
happened?
the, they have the new Skyrim game, Avowed, right?
Oh,
That's what I'm talking
Rock
about.
Studio games, Obsidian. Yeah, they have those guys who were making basically what Bethesda was making with Fallout, and with they have their new game that basically looks like an Elder Scrolls game, and so now Microsoft just owns it all. Like, that's kind of crazy. Like, is Sony going to follow suit and be like, well, we want some of these types of games? What are they going to do?
That's what I was going to ask. Do you think Sony, because the rumors have been for a while that they, or maybe it's more wishful thinking by some people that want them to go after like Konami's library, or like see if they could like fully buy from. Like, do you guys think Sony's like, oh, we need to do this now? Like,
I think they're doing all right in terms of like first party exclusives go.
Yeah, they've done very well with their first party exclusives, and I think that will continue. Certainly, they've already set the pacing for that for this generation, and I'm sure they haven't played their whole hand yet due to COVID and all that other stuff. So I'm sure there's lots more fun stuff coming there. Like they've got their fair share of exclusives. They're not hurting in that department.
Well, and it was interesting because just last week we were talking about like, oh, Sony came out swinging with this like Final Fantasy 16 announcement that it's exclusive to the PlayStation, which seemed like a big get. And so Microsoft's like, oh yeah, well, guess what? Elder Scrolls Fallout, Doom, now we own that.
wasn't there talk?
I'm sure it was a direct response. It happens that quick.
Yeah, over the weekend. I think the only thing, wasn't there a rumor at some point that Sony was looking at like Take-Two and GTA as a possible acquisition? I feel like that's one of the only things that could actually top Bethesda going to Microsoft, right? At least like news wise.
Yeah, I think I heard those rumors, but who knows what'll happen?
Yeah, companies are always talking about buying each other all the time.
Yeah.
I can start a rumor today. You want a rumor about a company buying? I can start that right now. I'll go on Twitter and just say something.
Hey, Nintendo, you want to buy me? I'm for sale. Nintendo right here.
Yeah, that's a good
I'll
pickup.
cut you a deal.
I think you should grab
$1 billion.
Street Comedian.
Cool. Well, very interesting. I'm
It's
excited.
a huge topic, it's a huge topic and a good question. I just don't know what we can offer. Like we have no idea what gears are turning and what wheels are spinning at the top levels of these companies in terms of where this goes and what this means at our level of like, can I play the game? Right?
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy. It's huge, gigantic.
All right. Next question. Kid Filetu. I hope I'm not mispronouncing that name because that can't be right. He says, "Hey, informants, Kid here from Athens, Georgia. If anyone is listening to this from Athens, stop by and say hello." So yeah, free invite everybody in Athens. Cool. He said, "So my 8-year-old son just beat Super Meat Boy. This is crazy to me. Like I have Super Meat Boy is rough, especially those later levels. The other day, and I was genuinely proud of him for seeing that because I'd never beaten the game myself, which same here." He says he's also maybe slightly jealous, but more proud. It made me think, have any of you guys ever been excited or proud of somebody else for beating a game, or am I the only one?
All the time.
He also says, real quick, he says, "Thanks for taking the time to read my question, and shout out to my son, Kid Blue Ghost. Good job, Kid Blue Ghost."
Kid Blue Ghost, man, cool. Athens, Georgia is a happening place.
What do you guys think?
I'll kick it off. I'd say anytime anybody that I know, experiences trepidation when approaching any kind of Souls series game, and then they beat it, and then 9 times out of 10 they're like, wow, that was actually really awesome, and now I'm super into them. The 1 time out of 10 they're like, that's not for me, and that's fine too. But I always love it when it works out for them, and then they reach those levels of satisfaction and triumph that I think that the series brings out in people. So, like, I guess Kyle Hilliard, back when he started getting into those games, I was like, wow, that's awesome. Nice job, Kyle. Hey, that's an example I can think of.
Yeah, I remember my wife doesn't really play too many games, but there's one period where I was like, oh, maybe she's getting into games, where she was playing Plants vs. Zombies for a while on the iPad. I was like, well, plus that's a cool game to be into. And she beat that game. I was like, kind of proud. I was like, hey, nice. Like, she didn't even really like ask for my help much, which sounds arrogant to say, but like, she doesn't play games at all. So I don't know. I shouldn't have even said that last part.
You're really digging yourself a hole here.
Yeah, there's no way out of this now. Oh.
No. I in a similar vein, hopefully I don't dig myself in a hole here too. But my girlfriend's not a huge gamer. We'll play. She likes Heave Ho. We'll play Moving Out together as a group and stuff like that. But at one point, we were doing a distance relationship, and my buddy and I would play PUBG together a lot on the Xbox. And I came up one weekend, and she liked watching us play, and because we got to talk and stuff like that. And then one weekend, I went back up to school to see her, and I was like, you know what? You try this. You give this a shot. You've watched it enough. And she's like, I'm gonna die instantly. And she didn't win, but she got into the top 10 just by like army crawling through the map and like just getting really lucky with the circle. But like every time we saw the player count tick down, I was like, are you gonna get chicken dinner out of this? Like, are you serious? I think she pacifist ran it to, I think she got 7th or 6th. But my buddy Joe and I were like, are you a PUBG pro? Like, have you just been playing on the side? But it was that moment of like, that was like, I'm very proud of you. That's
Did she shoot at anybody?
I think she tried to shoot a pistol, and it was like, okay, maybe a stealth approach would be good for you on this.
Crawling is your strong suit, clearly.
Yeah. So that was unreal.
Well, it's a fun email. Harrison from Iowa, he writes in, he says, because of quarantine, I've been vociferously, is that the correct pronunciation there? He says
you're getting points for it either way.
Yeah.
Vociferously consuming manga again. Just to clarify, he's reading it, not eating it. Anyway, he says he's been reading a lot, and he's thinking about jumping into comic books. I read a Spider-Man comic book where Aunt May married Doc Ock, which is a classic, obviously. And he says he's dabbled in graphic novels like Lower V for Vendetta, but he hasn't really read any classic, quote unquote, hero runs in a while. I don't know if you guys care about this question. I just wanted to help a fellow comic book reader out.
Dang.
You have the floor.
I would say, Harrison, if you're really into reading, like, one of my favorite classic runs of a hero is the Thor run from Walt Simonson. It's like an old 80s run. It's hands down probably still the best Thor run out there. It's really good. Totally worth checking out. Harrison also wrote in, he said he needed help figuring out the name of his author. And I think the author you're looking for is Grant Morrison, Harrison, which, by the way, also had a really good run on X-Men in the early 2000s. So I would check that out. So good luck. Anything else you guys want to throw out there? Do you guys read comics?
Yeah. This is a little different. These aren't hero arcs, but big fan of like Preacher, Sin City, 100 Bullets. Those are some of the
Preacher is amazing. Yeah.
Some of the graphic novel runs that I've really enjoyed. Sandman.
For tough guys only, though, just to be clear. Some rough stuff in those.
So yeah. It's mature content.
I think it's kind of a duh answer, but if you haven't read Watchmen yet, I would heavily recommend that, especially because it is a concise graphic novel that I feel like there's a lot in those pages, and especially with the HBO show out there's a lot of good content outside of that, and it's a classic for a reason, and it is scary how relevant it is at times today. But if you need a fun palate cleanser, the Ultimate Spider-Man run from Brian Michael Bendis is incredible, and I love what they do with Peter in those stories, and then it leads into Miles Morales. So If you're looking to stay up on relevant stuff that it continues to, like, in the main culture, continues to grow, and with Miles Morales coming out later this year, and Watchmen having its sequel run, I think those are some good places to start.
Yeah, great. Nice work, guys. Cool. An Attack Corgi, he writes in, he says, "Hey, y'all. I've recently been going through my gaming backlog, some of which includes older games from the early 2000s. I guess those are older games for him. He says, I'm curious about the oldest game that you've played and who on the panel takes the crown for the most played ancient title. So
The most
there's
played ancient title?
a couple ways you could take this. Like either like who's playing the oldest game right now, or who has played the oldest game ever. And I looked it up. Pong was in 1972. I assume most of us have played.
We've all played Pong though, right? But
Yeah.
So has anybody played a game that's older than Pong?
Life.
No, I haven't. Unless we're talking, board games. I bet I played chess. It's kind of old.
Monopoly is pretty old.
I've
Yeah,
pushed the
chess,
hoop with a
backgammon,
stick.
Go.
Does that count? Yeah.
This is a tough question because of that weird wording.
When I was at the Strong Museum of Play in Rochester, New York, I believe they had a setup for Space War. It wasn't the original because that was like built in MIT's computer
Right.
lab, which was, the size of a room.
And it's
But
at
Space
MIT.
War, what's that?
And it's at MIT.
And there's that. And
I heard they built
probably
them in
exist
other
anymore.
universities after the MIT one though too, right?
The Space War game.
Yeah.
I think they did. Like they've been able to recreate it and whatnot. Anyway, the point is, I played sort of a recreation of that. So if you count that, that was 1962.
I think Reese wins. Then we can't top that.
But is anybody playing like right now playing a game that's like old, like just in their backlog?
Bloodborne.
That ancient old gem.
I mean, I'm not playing anything older than I know.
2015 on the title screen, baby.
Oh my gosh! Remember those
A
days?
lifetime ago.
Yeah.
I'm playing through Super Mario All Stars on the side when I have time. I beat
Now,
Super
not
Mario,
3D All Stars.
not 3D All Stars. I'm playing that too, but specifically the 2D classic on the SNES Online for Switch. I beat Super Mario Bros. For the first time ever when that thing came out. I realized I had never actually gotten through all of it, so that felt good. So I'm gonna go to 2 and then 3 on there, and that collection is just so good. The 2D version is it, and it fits so well on Switch. And I not gonna lie, I use the rewind feature, and it's great. It's just a breezy play, and I really like that. So
very nice. Well, Alex, depending on the wording, I guess you win.
Kind of win.
There you go.
Half the trophy.
We can share the title. I'll get it on the weekends. You can have it every other weekend.
It's like in Mean Girls when they break the tiara and throw it out into the crowd.
Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly.
Is that going to land here? Okay.
Just like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the Triforce of Mean Girls.
The Triforce.
Yeah.
Great. Dan Phantom. I think this will be our last email. Unfortunately, we don't have time to do character ranking this week. This isn't a bit. I'm sorry, Cork.
This is going to lead into the character ranking, isn't it?
No, this is not a bit, I swear.
Okay.
We will bring it back. We know it's pretty popular, but we're giving it a week off, and we'll be back for some more next week for sure. But for now, Dan Phantom 77, he says, "Hey gang, I was watching the replay episode of Mass Effect 2 this last Friday, and Leanna, one of our new hires, she mentioned that she had played through Mass Effect trilogy 30 times, which seems insane to me. I don't know how she played any other game. I was wondering, what game have you personally played through multiple times? For me, it's The Darkness 2 on PS3, which he doesn't explain why, but I would love to know why that one caught your attention so much.
Please write back in. Yeah.
Yeah,
Fair
please
choice.
tell
I
me
like
why you played that so much.
Yeah.
But he says he played it well over 40 times, which is just, again, why Darkness 2? I think the first one was better, but anyway. Dan, please, you got to let us know why. What about that game captured your attention? But yeah, what about you guys? What do you guys think? I don't think I have a game that I played that many times.
Yeah, that's the thing. I certainly have games that I come back to and play hundreds, if not thousands of hours in, but it's not because I can play through them, right? It's just like stuff like World of Warcraft or Dota or League of Legends or like, a CCG or something like that. For regular games that are traditional playthroughs, like I don't like even for games that I absolutely adore, I don't go back more than a couple times in general. So I don't
Yeah,
know.
for me, stuff like that I consider some of my favorite games of all time, like Super Metroid, I probably still only played it like 3 times.
Yeah.
Or Ocarina of Time, same thing.
Yeah.
For some weird reason, not Legend Zelda, Resident Evil, the remake on GameCube, I think I played that close to a dozen times. Because something about it when it came out, I just got really good at like running through it really quickly, and I wanted to unlock all the costumes, and I wanted to play it with Chris and Jill. So I played that close to a dozen times, but that's probably the game that I played, unless you're counting stuff like Jackbox, like party games. Like that's
No, we're not going to count those.
No.
I would say,
you guys.
yeah, I would say Pokemon Yellow is probably that for me, but also it's because like it came on to different, like, I played it on my Game Boy, but then I played it on my 3DS when it came out. I played Let's Go Pikachu when that dropped. So, but even then, like I'm with you, Ben. I think maybe 7 or 8 times type of thing. Like nothing crazy. It was more so when it came to a new system, I was like, yes, I'm all over that. I want to take this journey again. So
Great. Well, that does it for emails, everybody. So if you have an email you want to send, please send it to podcast@gameinformer.com. We love reading them. It's my favorite section, personally. So please keep sending them in. And that brings us to the last segment of the show, a segment we like to call Get Wrecked, where we recommend some stuff to check out on Game Informer and GameInformer.com. Alex, let's start with you. You got anything to recommend?
I do indeed. New hire Liana and I did a video kind of, I think we covered it a bit in this episode, but if you guys are hungry for more information on the Microsoft acquisition of Bethesda, I'd encourage you to go check our video out from that. We kind of go into a little bit more in depth on how it's going to affect Game Pass and whether or not we think these exclusives will stay exclusive or if they'll populate the greater gaming world. So I really liked that. If you want to get to know Liana a little bit more, that's a great spot to do it. So
great. Dan?
Get wrecked. This is my favorite segment of the show. This week, I'd like to recommend something I just penned the other day. It's called The Horrors and Highlights of Gaming's Own Nothing Future. So it really takes a look at a sort of a broad level overview of where I see the industry moving in the next 5 to 10 years. A lot of machine learning, algorithms, heat maps, big data, just some of that futurism stuff that you sometimes get a taste of in the show here from me. So if you like that kind of stuff, that's the article for you. Check it out at GameInformer.com. And don't forget, get wrecked.
I like how you looked down to check to make sure it was still there. It's like, okay, I'm good.
I want to hold it upside down because that would have really kind of sucked the wind out of his sails a little bit.
Yeah.
I can get with that. Yeah.
Cool. What about you, Quark?
Yeah, you can read the Mafia Definitive Edition review on GameInformer.com. Kind of give you a more articulate breakdown of what I thought of the game. Yeah.
Perfect. For me, this is kind of a little one, but and it's just a news story, but it made me laugh that Liana wrote this story about Xbox One X sales skyrocketed when the pre-orders for the Xbox Series X opened up. So like the new system, the pre-orders opened up, and it could be a weird coincidence, but it seems like a lot of people bought the Xbox One X, which is the current system, by mistake. So there's a little news story online that you can read about if you want to know a few more details. And if you were one of those people, I'm sorry.
Unless you're a scalper, in which case,
If you're one of the people, we want to hear from you.
Gotcha. Yeah.
We want to hear from you. Send it in to podcast@GameInformer.com.
Yeah, if you have a huge purchasing mistake, please email us and let us know all about it. Great. Well, that does it for the show. Thanks for watching or listening this week. We appreciate it. Please like and subscribe or subscribe to the magazine. We appreciate all the feedback. Leave us a review wherever you can. On Yelp is fine too. Wherever you want to leave a review, we're totally into it.
Yes, Zomato would be great for that. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, perfect. Just tell a friend about it. Tell your cat about it. We love it. And thanks for watching or liking or watching. I should have quit when I had the chance. Dang it. I blew it. I was so close. Dang it. All right. Thanks for liking or watching this episode of the show. And be back next week. Bye.
Get us out of here.
Game on.